Hello and welcome to another action-packed, exciting hour of the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Re-Watch-Along Project. This is podcasting the way it used to be and the way you like it. This show is a production of the Something Else Podcasting Network, and it is episode number 055 of Smoky Mountain Wrestling from February 13th, 1993, taped January 18th, 1993, at the Rec Center in Newton, North Carolina. My name is Aria, and welcome to the show. Now, in case you've never checked out the Smoky Mountain Re-Watch-Along Project, what we do here, yes, folks, it is really quite simple. We watch every single episode of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, beginning with episode number 1, way back on February 1st, 1992. We go all the way live to episode number 200 on November 26th, 1995. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, the so-so, the okay, the tremendous, the out of this world, the all right, the forgettable, the unbelievable, the memorable, the shit you'll always talk about, the shit you've forgotten already. We'll watch some matches, we'll listen to some promos, we'll talk about some angles, and ultimately we'll have some fun for the next hour or so talking about some old school wrestling in the Smoky Mountains. And then at the end of the show, to give you an idea of what February 13th, 1993 is, I tell you what else is happening this week in the world of wrestling. Because I can tell you February 13th, 1993 until I'm blue in the face, but hey, sometimes telling you this happened, that happened over there, you're like, oh, I remember that. Oh, that happened this week? And I'm like, yes, it did. So with that, let's dive into this week's episode. Again, this is episode number 55 of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, February 13th, 1993. It is the last show taped in Newton, North Carolina, because we're going to move next week to a new location. Let's go to Caudle and Dutch to intro the show.
Another action-packed, exciting hour of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Wrestling the way it used to be and the way you like it. Hi, wrestling fans. I'm Bob Caudle, along with my tag partner right here, Dirty Dutch Mantel. And as I say, we've got another great hour in store for all you wrestling fans this week. You're going to see in action our heavyweight champion, the Dirty White Boy, against Reno Riggins. The Rock and Roll Express are going to be here. The Heavenly Bodies, Kevin Sullivan, and more. And what about Down and Dirty, Dutch?
And on Down and Dirty with us today will be a special summit meeting between the stud stable. That's myself, Robert Fuller, Jimmy Golden. We're going to be talking about the Heavenly Bodies and the Rock and Roll Express with some recent video relating to incidents that have occurred recently.
All right, what about our Beat the Champ?
Our Beat the Champ, I just happen to have my hat right here with a bunch of names in it. Tracy Smothers' opponent will be, and the winner is, the first name I draw right here, Mr. Paul Lee will face Tracy Smothers today.
All right, fans, Paul Lee is going to be taking on Tracy Smothers, and we're going to be back. We'll have action right after we take this time out.
Okay. So don't tune out yet, but yes, the Tracy Smothers Beat the Champ TV title match is actually the main event. But please don't turn the show off just yet. I mean, I still get the view or the listen that says that you clicked on the damn show, but I'd rather listen to the whole thing. Plus, spoiler alert, it's not going to be Paul Lee. Anyway, so today it's Dirty White Boy versus Reno Riggins as a follow-up to the month-long storyline with Reno Riggins, where, he proves week after week why he never got more of a push than he did, thus proving me, wrong when I said about a month or so ago that he should have gotten more. Really shouldn't have. He was just good enough to be where he was. Plus, we're going to see the Heavenly Bodies. We're going to see the Rock and Roll Express. We're going to see the Stud Stable. And then we're going to have video of something recently that happened involving them. And if you've been following this, you know what I'm about to play here, a little bit later on in this show. There's a major happening that, happened, and we've got audio of it later on. And so they go to commercial, they come back from a commercial, and suddenly in rolls Dirty White Boy and Mr. Ron Wright before the big match against Reno Riggins.
Fans with us right now. Here's the Dirty White Boy and, of course, his manager, Mr. Ron Wright. And, White Boy, I guess you might say this match that you got coming up, we could probably call it a challenge match because Reno Riggins is a guy that's ready.
Well, first of all, Reno Riggins made the biggest mistake of his lifetime when he humiliated and come out here and embarrassed Mr. Ron Wright, which is a living legend in professional wrestling. Now, it's plain and simple. Here's how it's going to be. I'm going to start getting the just respect that I'm due, and so is this man right here. And Reno Riggins, I'm fixing to show you and everybody walking the face of God's green earth why I am the Smoky Mountain Heavyweight Champion.
All right, there's the words, and we're going to see if he can live up to them. Let's go to the ring.
So I gotta say, White Boy, who has always been, an angry-looking man, was looking especially ornery this week. He's just, looking like he was pissed to be there. Not so much pissed to be there, but pissed to have to deal with Reno Riggins here. And I don't blame him for 1 second. Reno embarrassed Mr. Ron Wright last week. It was the biggest mistake of his life. And he's going to show everyone why he's the Smoky Mountain Champion. And that, of course, leads us to Smoky Mountain Champion Dirty White Boy with Mr. Ron Wright versus, pardon me, what the fuck is wrong with my voice today? Versus Reno Riggins. All right, let's try that. There we go. So White Boy had the match won in 45 seconds with a Buck Snort Blaster, but he picked up Reno at 2 to keep the beating going. So this is what happens when you don't allow yourself to be taken under the wing of one of the greatest gentleman wrestlers of all time. Sure, he would have had to carry their bags and polish White Boy's boots, but then he'd learn. He'd get to be under the learning tree. Reno legitimately got zero offense. Like, this was like, I don't even want to say it was a burial. Like, maybe it was. Maybe, it was booked to be more competitive, and then Jim watched some of the stuff we've seen in recent weeks with Reno's interviews and whatnot, and it was like, okay, we can't fucking book this as a serious match here, but we can't shorten the fucking time either, so we're just gonna have, White Boy punch him in the face for 5 minutes. Legitimately, it was 5 minutes of White Boy punching Reno in the face. Eventually, Tracy Smothers got tired of watching Reno get punched in the face, so he runs down and throws the towel in. So White Boy's declared the winner, because Reno's too stupid to just submit on his own, apparently. And White Boy, who wasn't done, delivering strikes to Reno, kicks him in the dick. And the kick to the dick led to the referee reversing the decision. And so, yes, Reno wins by disqualification due to dick kick. Tracy and White Boy stare each other down before White Boy walks away. So let's go to our weekly promo with Kevin Sullivan and the Night Stalker.
Hey, fans, right now, here's the Night Stalker and, of course, Kevin Sullivan. Tim Horner. It's coming down, no doubt about it, Night Stalker.
Believe it or not, a miracle has came to Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Primetime Brian Lee, out of nowhere, you have a friend, one friend, and that man happens to be White Lightning Tim Horner. Let me tell you one thing. On the 19th, after I beat him half to death, knocked every bit of the air out of him, choked his face till he's blue. Come on, bring your friends on, because the Night Stalker is hungry, and I need to be fed.
Bob Armstrong, at first, my analyst said, you gave me anxiety. Now he said, I'm shell-shocked. I'm ready for war. I've enlisted. I've been doing my push-ups. I've been doing my jumping jacks. I've had my combat boots, and I'm running. You see, I'm ready to face Armstrong's family of rats. And when I was a kid, I used to go to the junkyard with a long spike, and I used to hunt those rats until they got in the corner. Then I would take my spike, and I'd stab those rats, and I'd stab this one, that one, and that one, until they all bled. First blood? We'll see.
The diabolical Kevin Sullivan and the Night Stalker fans.
So, Kevin Sullivan with the Kevin Sullivan promo of the week, building up the first blood match with Primetime Brian Lee. You know, I didn't want to say like it's, just also ran it, but it's like, it's another great Kevin Sullivan promo. And unfortunately, we see a lot of great Kevin Sullivan promos. And unfortunately, it's not even in the same league of promo of the week this week. We'll get to the best promo. And it certainly wasn't Night Stalker saying that choking, what's his name, Horner's face is going to turn him blue. That would be his throat. You don't want to, choke his throat to turn Horner's face blue. Just saying. So Kevin Sullivan with the Night Stalker technically was up next to wrestle Bart Batten. These damn Batten twins haven't been on the show in 6 months, and now all of a sudden they're on every fucking week. Sullivan hit Bart with a chair, which was not a disqualification, so Night Stalker ran in, and it was a disqualification. Night Stalker gives Bart a power bomb, and Sullivan then went after Bart's head with the spike. Tell you what, they do a great job of getting over how violent Sullivan is and how easy it is for him to bust another man open with this first blood match coming up. Outruns Primetime Brian Lee, who channels his inner alpha male Monty Brown as he pounces Kevin Sullivan and then clotheslines Night Stalker out of the ring. Primetime Brian Lee then apparently was planning on marrying Bart Batten as he lifted him up to carry him over the threshold. So Night Stalker runs back in and uses his cloth to choke out Primetime Brian Lee. I'll tell you what, Bart Batten, if you've ever seen the Batten twins, they're both, they're not fat. They're a little pudgy, and they're very hairy. They got, bushy black beards, black hair, black chest hair, and Bart Batten is bleeding, but he's not like bleeding all over the place. He's got drops of blood kind of all over his body. And that just looked fucking nasty. I must tell you that. That looked fucking nasty here, people. Two guys run in for the save, and Sullivan and Primetime beat their asses. And finally, Horner runs in with a barbell, which chases the heels off. So, dumbbell for a dumbbell. So from here, let's go to the beginning of Down and Dirty with Dutch. And, there's going to be a lot of, stuff to talk about this, but I want you to notice something that Dutch says at the beginning of this and how it differs from how it normally does. But this is good shit. It's about 4.5 minutes long. It's one of the more famous moments, especially with the Smoky Mountain WCW crossover, which is almost over for reasons we'll get to later. But let's go to this right now.
Howdy, welcome to Down and Dirty with Dutch. I'm Dutch Mantel, and unfortunately, you're not. But in one of the most serious breaches of wrestling etiquette in wrestling history, the feud between the Rock and Roll Express and the Heavenly Bodies has spilled over into other areas, other federations. Now, recently on a WCW TV taping, the Heavenly Bodies invaded WCW TV taping looking for the Rock and Roll Express and the head management of WCW. Let's take a look at it now and draw your own conclusions.
Big executive, huh? Big man, big vice president, big cowboy Bill Watts. You got a problem with the phones, huh, at CNN, huh? You got a problem with the telephones? You don't want to talk to Jim Cornette? I walked out on this stinking company for less than you. Let me tell you something. I got a problem, and I'm going to explain this. Matter of fact, I'll tie one half of my brain behind my back where we'll be even, okay? I walked out of here and so did Stan Lane 2 years ago because the people that run this crummy, stinking company tried to make the Midnight Express look like a bunch of idiots. I hated Jim Herd with a pea purple passion, and I ain't too warm on you. We left. We took and we found Dr. Tom Pritchard, and we formed another tag team, the Heavenly Bodies, and we went to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, where they appreciate wrestling talent. And we became the tag team champions of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And then all of a sudden, like some kind of cancer, the Rock and Roll Express reoccurs. And they come and they steal our tag team belts. And before we can do anything about that, I'm sitting at home in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm watching television, and I turn on in front of God and everybody on national TV. You're showing a bunch of videotape of the Rock and Roll Express beating our brains out. Well, let me tell you, shut up. Let me tell you something right now, Bill Watts. I ain't going to stand for it. I broke up the Midnight Express because I didn't want TBS to make them look like idiots. And I'll be damned if I'll let you do it to Heavenly Bodies and we don't even work here. So I called Beautiful Bobby and brought him back to the phone, a man you've misused and abused for 2 years here. And we got our tag team belts back. And now what I want from you is a public apology, Watts, to all those people that you showed that videotape to. I want a public apology for trying to embarrass us, make us look like clowns. And if I don't get it, then brother, I'm gonna file suit. I'm gonna sue you. I'm gonna sue TBS. I'm gonna sue WCW. I'm gonna sue Ted Turner if I've got to. But I'll raise such a big stink about this that before it's over with, you're gonna be swabbing out toilets in CNN and popping popcorn in the TBS.
First of all, sissy, keep your hands off of me, because I don't want to have my blood tested. Now let's straighten one thing out. You've run your mouth. There's a lot of people I'd apologize to, but you're not one of them. Everything we showed on this program, we had all the releases and all the clearances, and we've been working hand in glove with Bob Armstrong, who's the commissioner of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. You're the biggest mouth there, but you don't carry a lot of weight. Wait a minute. You do carry a lot of weight. The next time you butt in on our show, I'll have Doug Dillinger and Atlanta's finest walk your big butt right down to the Crossbar Hotel, and we'll put you in jail.
I'll tell you who you ought to put in jail. You ought to have the Rock and Roll Express arrested for murder. They came out here last week and killed your ratings. You bring them out here like Henry Kissinger at a steak dinner, sitting them there, slapping us in the face. They're losers. We beat them.
That ring right out there is neutral ground. And I'll tell you, if you guys want to get your tails out there, we'll let you settle. Why don't you get that ring and hook them out?
We don't have
Any semblance of the rules in this impromptu contest.
All right. So, just going to throw this out of the way in case you didn't notice it. Dutch apparently has turned pseudo babyface. Because, at the beginning of all these Down and Dirty with Dutches, he always says he's Dutch Mantel and you're not. And now he's changed it to he's Dutch Mantel and unfortunately you're not. Okay, so with that out of the way, we get what was referred to one of the most serious breaches in wrestling conduct occurring recently when Corny and the Heavenly Bodies showed up at WCW Saturday Night to confront Bill Watts. And then they show the mostly unedited video of the angle where Corny confronts Bill Watts about how they left WCW 2 years ago. They found Dr. Tom and became a great team. Then the Rock and Roll Express reforms, and now they're feuding with them. But then he sits down in Knoxville and he turns on WCW to watch some wrestling. And he sees video of Rock and Roll winning on them and kicking their ass from Thanksgiving Thunder, which aired, a few weeks before this. Corny wants an apology for making them look like clowns, or they'll sue WCW, they'll sue Ted Turner. And the key is, and it's sad that we didn't quite time this perfectly, because if I started Smoky Mountain now and I was talking about this a year from now, we could have timed it perfectly. But as a throwback to their Mid-South angle, in 84, Corny's poking the chest of Bill Watts. And Bill Watts is like, don't poke me, sissy. And he won't apologize to him. Now, by the way, I should note, in doing my weekly research of the things that are going on in the rest of the world of wrestling, there was some heat. Some legitimate heat outside of the wrestling bubble with when Bill Watts said not to touch him or he'd have to get a blood test, implying AIDS, because AIDS was a big fucking thing at this point and not something to be taken lightly. And I would say they made Watts apologize, but that's not even going to be a point here anyway. So eventually, by the way, they mention, that he's working with Commissioner Bullet Bob Armstrong to show this, so that there won't be any lawsuits. And while Corny's all big and bad, he really, has no say in anything. So eventually the Rock and Roll Express come out, we get a shoving match, and notably, even though there are 4 heels and only 2 Rock and Roll Express, the Heavenly Bodies back off. Watts, of course, offers to let them get in the ring, and believe it or not, they get in the ring. We have a tag team match here, playa. A tag team match with the Heavenly Bodies, Stan Lane and Dr. Tom Pritchard, with Bobby Eaton and Jim Cornette at ringside, versus the Rock and Roll Express. Now, of course, this is on Peacock. It is on the WWE Network. So, if you want to go check that out, I don't know which episode this was, but I mean, it's late January, early February, 93. WCW Saturday Night. Check it out. Anyway, Gibson had the match won with the double drop kick, but Eaton runs in for the disqualification. We have a 4-on-2 beatdown when the underneath babyface jobbers start hitting the ring, including Rob Van Dam. And Rob Van Dam did not fare well, as he got his ass kicked too. And the Bodies were left standing tall. Now, you might recall, this whole segment was a down and dirty with Dutch. And you might recall all Dutch did so far was pitch it to that angle. Well, guess what? Dutch still has more to talk about. Let's go now to what was referred to as the summit meeting with Dutch Mantel and the Stud Stable.
Okay, fans, you saw it. Now, they've had their say. They've done what they want to do now. Special summit meeting of the Stud Stable. Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden. Jimmy, your comments on the situation now.
Well, I'd just like to know what's going on. The Heavenly Bodies, the Rock and Roll Express, they go off to other promotions. They're with other organizations. They're not paying a bit of attention to the Stud Stable or what we got to say. I know that the Rock and Roll Express, when they was the champions, the only thing they ever worried about was the Heavenly Bodies. The Heavenly Bodies come along and steal our title match on TV that we're supposed to have. And then when they win the belts, the only thing that they're ever worried about is the Rock and Roll Express. Yeah. When does the Stud Stable get some acknowledgement around here?
Yeah, that's what I want.
You know, Dutch, you got to wonder, stars. I mean, what makes you a star anyway? You go to one company and wrestle another company. That don't make a darn with me. What makes you a star is when you have the belts. And Jimmy's right. You don't get a shot at those belts, you ain't going nowhere. I'm going to tell you something, boys. It's like an old mule out there in the barn. He's not yeeing and hawing for you. What you got to do is slot some sense into him and slap him good, son, and then he's going to listen to you. You tell him, Cornette, your whole bunch there, son, and make it clear to him. We're going to get your attention, Buster, and we're not going to play with you when we do it. You be looking for it, because if you're not, we'll get you from behind, because we don't care where we get him or when we get him. Right. We're just gonna get you, boys. And I can guarantee you this, it ain't gonna be a pretty thing, because you come to the bad guys in town. You're looking at Jimmy Golden, Dutch Mantel, the Tennessee Stud. We are the bad guys, and we're not afraid to prove it.
Okay, hang on. We'll be right back.
So, can we just say holy fuck? Like, holy fuck. Like, again, I know I say a lot of times, hey, you need to go back and watch this. You need to watch that episode. You need to watch this angle. The last 9 minutes, you need to go back and watch. Because holy fuckity, fuckity, fuck, fuck, fuck. This was great. And I don't want to disparage Jimmy Golden here, because, his part was really good. But he was there to set up Fuller. And he set up Fuller perfectly. He teed up that shot. He made the set for the spike. Whatever sports analogy you want to use. He, took the snap and is holding for the field goal here. It's like, let's just say it. Golden, talks about, that the Heavenly Bodies only concerned themselves with the Rock and Roll Express when they were champions. The Rock and Roll Express were champions. They only concerned themselves about the Heavenly Bodies. And Fuller begins screaming. And he's screaming about how they're going to get the attention of Cornette. They're going to get the attention of the Heavenly Bodies. And if they don't watch themselves, they'll get the Bodies from behind, because at the end of the day, they're heels. They don't care if they attack you from the front or the back. They're more of the tweeners in this feud, but they're still heel-leaning tweeners. And they have no problem attacking you from behind. They'll tell you flat out. They're not afraid to show that they're bad guys, and I can tell you that, this feud is closer to the end than it is to the beginning, and I want to see more. I want to see this shit keep going. I want to see more fucking Robert Fuller promos. Here's the thing, Robert Fuller's in WCW in a few months. It's like, I don't know how much longer he's lasting after, let's be honest, after the match they're building here, but, they're going to not be, around for much longer. And I know Jimmy Golden is Bunkhouse Buck at some point, but I don't think that's for a year, but I don't think Golden sticks around either way. But yeah, it's like one of those things like we say when we're talking about territory wrestling. Enjoy what you have while you have it. And this is one of those situations where they definitely could have milked this longer with the stud stable than they're going to be able to. But, we're going to find out, in a few years when they go to the well too many times with the same shit and how it gets old. But anyway, like I said, that was 9 minutes worth watching and just one after another. And it's like, again, like Rock and Roll Express, it's like, we've talked about this. It's like, they're like almost an afterthought in this feud, but they're an important part of the feud. And sadly, Ricky Morton can cut a great promo, but he hasn't really had a chance to cut a great promo. And even if he did right now, everyone else is so on fucking fire that it's like, oh, why do we got to listen to Ricky Morton? Let's listen to more Heavenly Bodies, more Robert Fuller, more Stud Stable. But, this feud will continue, folks. Let's keep it going. All right. So in the further proof that Tim Horner is being buried here, the intentional victim of sabotage. Horner is now going to come out for a promo. Yeah. After everything we've just seen, after the last 9 minutes, fuck, even going back, after the Kevin Sullivan promo. Then he beats the shit out of Bart Batten. Then Horner runs in to save Primetime Brian Lee. Then we had Down and Dirty. Then we had Cornette, the Heavenly Bodies, Bill Watts, the Rock and Roll Express, all that shit. Then we had the Stud Stable with that Robert Fuller promo. And now, after all that, now we're going to get a Tim Horner promo. And Primetime Brian Lee is here. But yeah, let's fucking go to a Tim Horner promo.
As Primetime Brian Lee, White Lightning, Tim Horner. Tim, it was you to the rescue again. I tell you, you're talking about serious, at least maybe even death injuries that some of these guys are facing with what's going on in the ring.
Serious as a word. Brian, I told you I'd stand by your side no matter what, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be there in Knoxville February 19th so you can get first blood. We're going to be ready, Bob Connell.
Bob Connell, First Blood, Kevin Sullivan, you come out here and talk about being crazy. I'm not all there now myself. I sit up at night. I don't know where they're coming from. Tim came to my hotel room last night and said, Brian, what's your light doing on? Why are you up at 3 in the morning? I told him, I can't even sleep. So I tell you what, if I lose some sleep, I'm going to take every bit of it out on you, Kevin Sullivan. February 19th, First Blood, I'm busting you wide open.
You too, stalker.
All right, man, that's it. Brian Lee, prime time is primed. Of course, for the Stalker and for Kevin Sullivan. And Horner's going to be in the corner.
Why did that go after all that? Why did they not put it, after the Kevin Sullivan match and angle? Why did they have to do that? It makes no sense except to bury Horner and to point out even more so than it's already pointed out that he is not in the same fucking league. And you're never going to make me believe at this point that this is not intentional sabotage. It's like, motherfucker, like, we've had weeks of this now. Like, you're intentionally allowing this to air. Jim Cornette, I'm talking to you. You're not listening to me, but I'm talking to you right now. obviously that WCW thing was pre-taped. You could have dropped that in fucking anywhere. And you're telling me that Cornette went to these tapings, saw these tapings, and thought to himself, you know what the best place for that, Horner thing is? After all that WCW stuff, after those great promos, after, that great angle. I'm sorry. It's like at this point, and I'm sure it's like, because we're at the point where Horner is really pissing off Jimmy, and Horner is really pissing off the baby faces. And pretty much the only people who are getting along with him at this point are the Armstrongs and Dirty White Boy. And that's about it. But, holy fuck. All right. So Dark Secret and Robbie Eagle, speaking of the Armstrong brothers, Dark Secret and Robbie Eagle versus the Rock and Roll Express. Gibson wins with a sunset flip in what is essentially a 2-on-1 handicap match because Eagle never gets in the ring. There's literally nothing else to say about this match. So let's go to a Rock and Roll Express promo. Because, hey, at least, again, it's not fucking Horner.
At those tag team belts, those things are weighing heavy on your minds.
That's right, Bob Call. The way that Jimmy Cornette comes out here and tells everybody about the heavenly bodies, that they are a corporation. Remember one thing, Jimmy Cornette, we've been through a lot with the Midnight Express years ago. Things hadn't changed. You see, baby, just the names have. But you remember one thing, rock and roll's here to stay. We don't care about that. Only one thing's on our mind. That's to put those Smoky Mountain Tag Team Championship belts around our waist, because right here in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, it is the best wrestling today, baby. That's what it's all about. So, Cornette, anytime, any place you want to put the belts up, well, come on down, baby. We'll be waiting on you. Just put your name on the dotted line. Oh, look at here. We'll get in the ring up here.
Oh, wait, yeah, in a ring. Here.
What do you want?
You two little pipsqueaks. So if you want to get your butts handed to you and your teeth knocked so far down your throat, you'll be past them for days. Then come on up here in this ring right now. What's the matter? Are you stinking scared?
Jim, they're outnumbered. There's only two of them. There's only two of them. There's four.
Yellow dogs.
There's four in the ring. You guys will be tremendously
Hey, Ricky,
outnumbered.
I bet your old
You said a lot. Sometimes the man's going to do what he's going to do, Bob. That's the way it is.
Oh, they're going to get it on. They don't care about.
If you can't get along, you got to get it on, I guess. So they've mentioned they've been through a lot in the history with the Midnight Express, and the only thing that's changed at this point is the name. Now it's not the Midnight Express, and now it's the Heavenly Bodies. And I mean, it was a fine promo, but again, it's like, this isn't the great fired up Ricky Morton promo that we'd love to see here, but I guess, not everybody can be the greatest promo of all time every week. Anyway, Cornette and Heavenly Bodies show up in the ring. They challenge Rock and Roll to get into the ring. Cottle points out it's 4-on-2, and Morton says that a man's got to do what a man's got to do, and they got in the ring. And by the way, I should note that Killer Kyle, who has always been with the Heavenly Bodies, ever since Eaton came back, Killer Kyle has not been at ringside. They had him do that match last week, but it's like at this point, it's just the three Heavenly Bodies and Jim Cornette when I talk about the four of them. Cornette, of course, bails to the outside, and a 5-way free-for-all breaks out. Rock and Roll, despite being outmanned, had the advantage until Morton got caught in a combo backdrop stun gun. Corny got back in because the gimmick, of course, is he's a pussy who can't even be in an unfair fight unless both opponents are down. At that point, Stud Stable and Dutch run in with chairs, and Eaton takes repeated chair shots to the head. And once the Heavenly Bodies leave, the Stud Stable beat down the Rock and Roll Express with chairs. This part may have gone on a little too long. Like, legitimately, where are the referees to break it up? Where are the jobbers running in to try to break it up? Eventually, the Stud Stable just walk off. Still a very strong angle, and we keep pointing out that this is a great angle, and they're making the eventual three-way make sense. Whether or not it should be a three-way, like, again, they're doing a fantastic job building up to a tag match, but we're getting a three-way. And there's more of it to come, believe me. As you might notice, there's 3 people on one side, there's 3 people on a second side, but there's only 2 people on another side. It's like there should be something going on here. All right, so technically our main event is scheduled to be Beat the Champ TV champion Tracy Smothers versus Paul Lee. So let's go to announcer Brian Matthews, who's going to introduce Nature Boy Paul Lee. And you might be wondering, why am I playing this? Which you probably figure out that there's something behind it.
Title introducing the challenger, making his way to the ring from Chattanooga, Tennessee at 220 pounds, the Nature Boy Paul Lee.
Hey, Dutch, that's not Paul Lee coming down the aisle. That's the Dirty White Boy and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
You know, the funniest thing just happened. Paul Lee has come down with the flu or possibly pneumonia. But Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, being the great athlete that he is, knew how important this match was, so he's going to take his place.
So what a magnanimous gesture by Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Paul Lee has suddenly come down with the flu, or he's come down with pneumonia possibly, but yet they're still gonna, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, he knows how important this match is, and being the great man, the great athlete that he is, he will take Paul Lee's place. And so now we're instead going to have Beat the Champ TV champion Tracy Smothers versus Paul Orndorff with the Dirty White Boy. This is Tracy's 3rd match of this TV taping, and the fans still love him. And of course, Tracy, despite being a babyface, he's going to come in, he's going to accept the challenge. He's got something to say here first.
Boy, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to tell that you're behind all this. Hey, when I come here to Smoky Mountain Championship Wrestling, I said I wanted to face the best. Well, this man, Mr. Wonderful, is a legend, and he's definitely one of the best. But I know this for a fact. I can't win the Indy 500 by running around the block. To be the best, you gotta beat the best. Mr. Wonderful, I got all the respect in the world, but if you want some of me, I want some of you.
Well, he certainly didn't back away.
Now, where I come from, we got a saying. That's it. If you can't get along, you gotta get it on. Let's do it.
Yeah, Tracy's now stealing phrases from me. Or, one of us is stealing from the other one. Not sure which one yet. But, we'll get to that at some point, I'm sure. But, so anyway, the bell actually rings, which proves that, yes, I am a liar, because remember like 3 weeks ago, I said that Orndorff's never going to appear on the show again after the Mr. Orndorfful promo? Well, not only am I lying, he's actually in a fucking match. But I promise, this is it. This is it, people. This is it. No more Mr. Wonderful after this. So we've talked about, when things get fucked up in Smoky Mountain Wrestling and don't involve Tim Horner, we get long shots of the crowd. Somehow I don't know how, but they somehow fucked up a lockup so bad between these 2 professionals with decades of experience at this point. We got a shot of the fans during this lockup. So Cottle questioned why Orndorff is in this match instead of Lee. Dutch brings up, hey, 2 weeks ago, the Heavenly Bodies were sidestepped into a tag team title match when the Stud Stable was late. And this was where it got weird, because I think even though, these shows take about 50 to 51 minutes, and they typically use up all 50 to 51 minutes. And this episode was 51 minutes. And Cottle starts talking about how earlier in the show, Sandy Scott came out and booked Rock and Roll Express versus Stud Stable for next week. That did not happen. It did not happen. So I guess, I don't know what the hell happened there, what got edited out, but, what the hell happened? But I guess we're getting Rock and Roll versus Stud Stable next week, so hooray! So White Boy is there for immoral support, and he attacks Tracy with the ref's back turn. Tracy starts his comeback. White Boy gets on the apron to distract Smothers. Orndorff goes for a pile driver, but the referee catches him and throws Tracy's feet down. And the finish sees Tracy throw Paul into White Boy, who is still on the apron, and rolls him up for the win. So yes, after I spoiled it for you that Orndorff won't be back after this one, yes, Tracy did in fact defeat Paul Orndorff. He's now won another $1,000. He's won 4 matches in a row, and now next week, Tracy Smothers gets the chance at that 5th win. And if he wins next week, he will get the $5,000 bonus and retire as champion. And by the way, as a parting gift to Smoky Mountain, Orndorff gives the referee a pile driver. So let's go to a show closing promo with Tracy Smothers.
Hey fans, a happy young man right here on my left, Tracy Smothers. What a great win that was. And I got to tell you, my confidence in you sort of wavered a little bit. You were up against tremendous odds.
Boy, I tell you, it's hard enough to face any opponent, but when you're not prepared for an opponent like Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, Mr. Cottle, that was the biggest single win I've ever had in my career. I say that, and winning this TV title over the Dirty White Boy, that's the 2 biggest wins I have ever had. I didn't see what happened. I was too late. I can't believe what they did to Daryl Morris. I hope he's all right. They pile driver. There's no sense in that. This is professional wrestling. I mean, I'm out here to be the best I can be, and I feel good that I can look in the mirror and I'm being the best that I possibly can.
Wait a minute.
Hey, I'm going to tell you what's the matter with me. You come out here bragging, saying that you're going to get a $5,000 bonus. Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Smothers. There's no way that you will get $5,000 as a bonus, because I'm personally going to see to it. And as far as I turn around here and face me, boy. And as far as I'm concerned, you getting a shot of this, it'll never happen, bucko.
Hey, White Boy. I'm not that referee you guys just pile drive right in here. There ain't nothing between us but space, man. You want some of me? Me and you can get it on right now, big boy. And you can shine that belt up and getting it looking real nice, because I proved to these folks all over the Smoky Mountain area that I'm capable of being the #1 contender. And by the good grace of God and the support of all these people right here and the millions of people watching this TV, I'm going to kick your and I'm going to take the Smoky Mountain Heavyweight Champion, because I'm a Southern-born, Southern-bred thoroughbred, born out in the volunteer state of Tennessee, and I volunteer to kick your butt like your mama should have done a long time ago when they called you the Dirty White Boy.
Well, all I got to say to that, Mr. Smothers, we'll see.
Ooh, all right, fans, there you have it. 1 to go, 1 win to go, that's all. He vows you'll never make it.
Hey, Mr. Cottle, I'm $1,000 richer. I don't care what that geek right there says. I got 1 more match to win. If I can win it, I get $5,000, and I can pay off my camper. I can buy a new motorcycle, and I can do the biggest party that the South has ever seen. 1993 will be the year that the South shall rise again. Thank you.
All right, fans, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Don't forget.
All right. So before you snort at that last part, we'll go into a little bit more deep on this. But, Tracy says he wasn't prepared to wrestle Paul Orndorff, but this is the biggest singles win of his career. And, I mean, at the very least, it's the biggest singles win of his Smoky Mountain career, because ultimately he really hasn't wrestled many named talents at this point. But either way, Orndorff was the biggest name they had at this point. And one of the biggest names that they would ever have. And, he pinned, him. He pinned him clean, which is not something you've seen a whole lot of, in the past year with Orndorff. He's won more than he's lost here. And when he's lost, he hasn't really done too many clean pinfall jobs in there. So White Boy storms in and says Tracy will not get the bonus. He's going to personally see to it, and that he will also never get a title shot. Tracy said that he needs to shine up the belt because he's coming for it. He then threatened to bleep his bleep, and then threatened to kick DWB's butt all the way up. DWB's butt the way his mama should have. And then he said if he wins the $5,000, he's going to pay off his camper, buy a new motorcycle, and throw the biggest party ever. Now, we're going to go with the assumption that we're including the extra $5,000 for the bonus. Now, who knows how much he has left on the camper? But let's say he wins next week and he gets the bonus. So that's a total of $10,000. So he's going to throw the biggest party ever. He's going to pay off his camper, which, by some he probably has a few $1,000s. And it made me wonder how much in 1993, how much was a new motorcycle? And apparently, an entry level motorcycle, according to Cycle World, it was between $4,000 and $6,000. So yes, you could have bought a brand new motorcycle for $5,000 in 1993. Go figure. I guarantee you're going to pay a lot more for it now. I don't think anyone would be surprised by that. Anyway, that is the big tease for next week. Can Tracy get his fifth win, retire as TV champion, or will we have a new champion? We're going to have to wait and find out. Plus, we're going to have Stud Stable versus the Rock and Roll Express. But before we finish things up here, all right, so what else is happening this week in wrestling? Last week we told you that Bill Watts was, pushed down from his mantle on top of WCW. However, he was still running the wrestling division. He was still the head booker. That's not the case anymore. Bill Watts officially resigned from WCW this week, a move that was painfully obvious after the news of last week. Now, if you've heard the story, and I'm sure, if you're listening to me, I'm sure you've heard the story before, but Cornette told the story about how Bill Watts didn't get fired. For what he said, he quit because WCW is this, that, and the other thing. And technically, it's true. Technically, he did not get fired. However, this was also at the same time where apparently 4 different major news outlets were working on a story about the famous Bill Watts comments from 1991, where he talked about, among other things, that if he owns a business and doesn't want to hire minorities or doesn't want to serve minorities, he shouldn't have to. And that shit, you want to talk about PC culture in 2024, that shit sure as hell didn't fly in 1983 either. And so I cannot prove this, but I'd bet it was more like, Bill, you can either quit and walk out on your own terms or be fired. And he, when that comes out, it's like, yeah, I might as well just quit. And technically then he gets to say, yeah, I didn't get fired, I quit. Oh well. So the other big news that we all knew was coming, but hey, it's February 1993. Eric Bischoff has officially been hired as the executive producer. He goes from being the C-level announcer to one of the heads of the company due to him impressing the higher-ups with his different, out-of-the-box ideas. And in case you're curious, Ole Anderson takes Bill Watts' spot as the head booker, but it does continue, with Eric Bischoff's in charge of TV, Sharon Siddell's in charge of pay-per-view, and Ole's the booker, but technically they can, he can be, edited and, he can be overruled. And finally, let's squeeze in some WWF news, even though it's still more WCW than WWF. But Ric Flair finally got his release from the WWF and is on the WCW payroll as of February 16th and is scheduled to debut at Super Brawl. WWF did get one last dig in by waiting until the day after WCW taped their last TV shows before the pay-per-view to sign the release and send it in. So technically, since they weren't even sure if, WWF was even going to do it, they couldn't even, promote him on the show that was taped. So, hooray for that, all right? Anyway, that's going to do it for this week. Another great episode of Smoky Mountain. We don't really give ratings on the show, but if we were to give one, this is a 10 just for, that middle 9 minutes there. And also for, that great Tracy win over Paul Orndorff. But that's going to do it for this week. Hope you all enjoyed it. I want to thank everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye.